Yeah, so I'm Lawrence. I work for a company called String & Tins, an audio post-production facility based in Soho in London, working predominantly in advertising. Bit of a composer as well, but the sound designer role broadly sort of covers all sorts of aspects of sound for visual, generally for visual media. String & Tins is one of the sort of the higher tier companies. It's pretty small, so where I worked for before had about 11 studios, where String & Tins has 3 with a few edit rooms and things. But they're doing much more exciting work and I guess do much cooler things than I used to do, which is why I've moved across. And I am a sound designer, composer, and I'm also the tech manager and tech manager there as well. So this is Studio One. We've got another studio which is basically the same, like 2 more about this sort of size. We can do 5.1 pre-mixing in there, but it's not a Dolby licensed suite, so we don't. Nothing will go to cinema from here. So my position includes, as I said, all aspects of audio. So I do Foley, effects, whether that's using synths or doing weird stuff with VSTs or just doing any odd audio bits and bobs that help get the job done and get a cooler mix at the end. I'll do the final mix, so I'll mix and master for TV, radio, cinema, Atmos, whatever. Then the music, so some of the other guys are more involved in the music side. They do pitching and stuff, it's just not really my strength, but the job sort of, audio is such a musical job by definition that the composition comes into it a lot, so I do a lot of tuning my sound effects to the right key and just having a general sort of knowledge of music is sort of helpful. I'm having piano lessons at the moment to try and help me out a little bit with that. And then, music supervision, so I'll talk to maybe if another composer has won it, then I'll sort of manage that and direct them and try to eke the client to the right direction and try and get a good job on the music sort of side of things. Then another huge part of my job is the management of the room, the people that are involved in the process. So in a minute I'll go through the sort of people that I work with, and it's just important to be able to deal with a room full of people and be relatively charming and sort of be an enjoyable person to work with, and time as well. So I have to, it's a big part of my responsibility is making sure that we'll hit the deadline on time, because they'll have a play-out date and a time, and there are quite big fines if you miss a play-out time and you have to resubmit stuff. Making sure that I get the job done and sort of quoting within the time and getting things done within that time is quite important. If anyone's got any questions during, if I work on babbling on and someone wants to shout, then do say. So I graduated in 2010, did sound engineering production with a first, and then I spent the next year sort of figuring things out and trying to get a job. I worked in a radio, I worked for a radio station, I did audio kit hire, and I worked for I think I wanted to do audio to visual stuff. So I was just trying to find my way in the door. And so I did work for a little post-production place in Exeter. But in the end, I had a buddy who managed to get me a runner's position in Jungle. And Jungle are probably top 5 biggest audio post facilities in the country. 11 studios, 11 engineers, got a Dolby suite, and they do mostly advertising stuff as well. And then so I generally, almost everyone will have, if you want to do this as a job, almost everyone will have the same sort of career path. You generally do a runner's job, do groundwork, means that everyone starts off on a level base and you have the right respect and understanding of how the company works. So I was quite lucky doing a year. I was engineering while some people that I was running were still running. So you just got to pull your finger out and really make it obvious that you're going to do right by the company and work hard if you're going to, and then you'll progress past other people. So I did running for a year. That's teas, coffees, getting lunches, moving paperwork around. Worst job was, I think we did an advert for one of those foot scourers, like to rub the dead skin off your feet. They recorded that for live, and I had to clear up the foot fungus from the. That was a low point. And then I went into transfer. So there's always 3 tiers, so runner, mid, and then engineering. So mid tier is either transfer, or it might be called library if you're doing documentaries or long form stuff, or audio assist if you're in a separate place. But that was like prepping the job for the engineer. You really get to know your way around the work, and you probably do like little bits of work on the side, like sound effect searches, learning what different specs are and what's expected and what's expected out of a mix, because you'd be QCing the mixes for the engineers. So you can say, I think there's an issue with this, or it's not touching spec, or so I did that for 2 years, and I know a guy who did that for 8 years. It's like, it really depends. You just got to push through. But yeah, 2 years I feel like it's a fair sort of whack at that if you're going to try and do it. And then so I've been engineering since 2014, and I basically started as soon as I was training in the evenings and things, kept just showing my mixes to the guy who was responsible for promoting people, and just got myself up to speed as quickly as possible, and just played the game a little bit, just tried to be a good candidate, you know. And then so I've been engineering since then, and then so I was at Jungle for 2014 to 2017, and then the last year I've been working at Stringtins, which is a much smaller place, but arguably doing much more interesting work. But there's a guy who I really respect as a sound designer. He set the company up, so I just wanted to be able to. I didn't know how his work was so good. I just wanted to be able to look at his Pro Tools projects and pull them apart and just get some advice from him. It's been really helpful. So this, I might need to press play on this, but this is I think we made this for just to sell stuff in with the clients, but it's got some sort of behind the scenes sort of stuff. About what we do. This is dry ice under sheet metal.
stop there, sound changes, and then
Yeah. So that's part of the job of, and part of what makes the job interesting is the creative freedom and a bit of theatre. People really respond to that sort of thing. So it's just, it really sells the job in if you're going out of your way to do these extra cool things, and you get results that you don't get from just noodling in the box, you know. But so, and another thing, part of the reason why I work in advertising is because you get to work on these like crazy creative campaigns. You'll get to work on a 30-second, a 6-minute job. Go to town on it, you'll get a budget, an insane budget, just for something which might not even relate to the brand. It's just sort of something really cool and exciting that you just get to throw a load of time and money and effort on and make something really cool that just stands alone. And then you get to move on to the next thing, rather than if you're, maybe some people go into work in film, but you'll be a Foley editor number 4, or dialogue editor, or you'll be part of a much bigger machine, whereas each of these jobs was done probably mostly by one person, so you get to really see it through. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Lawrence, with the stuff like the last one there, is that something that streaming teams would tend to work with the director on? Some of the more musical advertisements?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. So a lot of that will come from, I'll go through the sort of like the structure of it, but they'll come to you with a brief. So they'll probably have some, maybe they had some Cohen Sound tune, and they were like, we want to make the amount of briefs that come out, like, we want to make a tune out of things, so, and that's just one sort of example out of it, you know. But for sure, they'll come in and they are the creative lead on it, but you just have a huge amount of input on steer and what works and things. But yeah, they would have come in, so that picture that you had at first was just the artist. They would have come to us with that and been like, it's going to look like this, and they'll probably give you a load of tunes, or they say, we're not sure what we want, and then you'll do a music search and do some research and say, like, we think it'd be really cool to go down this sort of route, and then maybe just mock up a few things, and and then they'll stage by stage go through to what you see there. So there's a job, I don't know if this will skip on. So I won't be playing loads of work that we've done or anything. Well, I am going to, but I'll play you a little bit of stuff. But this job here, I'll explain. They came with ideas, and that was a real nightmare. I'm not particularly proud of this job. That's probably why actually. So I'm just going to play each of these and explain what sort of went in behind the scenes. That's right, and just give us a shout if you've got any questions on it. So this is an Audi job called Big Entrance. I think they knew what tune they wanted to use from the get-go. So they just give us that information, and they know that they'll probably storyboard, so they'll just be an artist's frame-by-frame sort of static images of what the ad's going to look like before they shoot it, and then you can get to work from the get-go. So I think I started by editing just a track to sort of try and fit it in, try and figure out musically where stuff's going to go. Then worked with composer to get it scored, and I think they make the track in using whatever library stuff, and then it gives you a bit of flexibility to like figure it out and nudge stuff around. They can move the pictures and sort of figure it out. And then once all that signed off, I think we went to Poland to record, just because they're cheaper, for the orchestra and then the choir get recorded. And this is partly why I like working at Stringingtons, is because we're involved at that stage. I didn't go, but for this one, a colleague went to Poland, and you're talking about putting your foot down and saying, no, because we need this sort of perspective shift here. We've got people doing this weird stuff down here. We need to cover that closely because we know that the shot's going to be perceived from this angle, and we know that it's going to be recorded and mixed in cinema. So we need maybe we'll need some mics up at the back as well to get some of that perspective. And then it came back here, and I think we turned it around quite quickly once it was mixed. I think it was a couple of weeks. And that's loads of... I think for that one, we took an Audi to a track. We took the car to a track to get all of the right engine stuff, because people can be picky about that. So that's quite a big sort of glam job. Then this was my first job when I started there. And this is much more in the box. Music supervising that. I pitched on it, but it wasn't good enough, so this guy won it. But and that was a good lesson when I first joined, because I pitched. Otherwise, I think I had an evening to do it or something, but the guys at work just said, if everything we output has got to be, people have got to be asking on the YouTube comments, what's this banger, the standards is as high as possible. I spent a couple of weeks mostly just twiddling synths and things, working back and forward with the composer to get the best job, and then there's not too much value because this was all in 3D obviously, so it's built up slowly over time. Getting feedback from my colleagues and just trying to get a cool mix together. Any questions about that?
Yeah, actually. With something like that, how much of it would be the role of the composer and how much the sound designer?
Yeah, there's a lot of it's the same.
Mix between there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, there's it's difficult to, but there's a tuned background, but then there's a lot of tuned elements on top of it.
Yeah, like sparkles as the little metal things fall down. And
yeah, so that's all should be in tune, and then also that stuff being in tune tends to blend into the background a little bit, but it just makes the person on the street doesn't matter to them, So. I don't know, maybe I can split out music and sound effects and put it on Moodle maybe or something. There's it's such a short little thing. It was weeks of me locked in a studio. You wouldn't know, the amount of work that goes into something like that. And even something more more live action, where they don't capture anything on set. So I'm working on the Sainsbury's Christmas campaign at the moment. And they didn't capture anything on set, and it's supposed to be a live performance. And so went to a Foley stage at Goldcrest, recorded a crowd, getting them to respond and react. Went to Foley Barn and got this Foley house up in just north of London, and did passes of footsteps, movement, other weird incidental stuff. Then I went and recorded a school of kids up in Leeds, recording them jumping around, laughing, saying all the little bits and bobs, and then spent the last 2 weeks like stitching all together, trying to make something which, when I show it to my mum, she'll be like, "Oh, great!" But it's because you've recreated it to try and make a live thing, you know. Yeah, and then this next job is, I'll show it to you.
Anything you can do, we can do better.
We can do anything better than you.
No, we can't.
Yes, we can.
No, we can't.
Yes, we can. We can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Anything you can be, we can be greater.
Sooner or later, we're greater than you.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Luckily, with TransPennine Express connecting all this, you don't have to choose where's best, just where next.
So that was a super difficult job. It was like the first one that I'd done where I was on set with the director and all the crew that go along with it. And it was about 20 locations. This was one of 2 ads, 20 locations across the UK. Trying to get them in all these conditions. We had to capture them live, trying to get them to sing in tune to a backing track, which they might not be able to hear. Like the Scottish drummers were probably going about, I was trying to rein them back from like 180 dB, like BPM or something, and because they're just getting excited and going into it, I'm saying it's never going to work because it will just sound bonkers, like cutting to these guys going nuts on the drums. And like the music, I should have been stronger with the way that we directed the music from the beginning, because I ended up probably, me and a load of composers probably composed maybe 30 different directions that this could go in, like a sort of like, from sort of edgy electronic to like more of this, a bunch of these big band sort of versions to like sexy jazz. And just because they could just be like, no, that's not quite working. It's sort of easy to say like, yeah, no. It's much easier to say that rather than have a sort of strong idea and follow through with it. I should have just done more of that. And on set with the director, the first day, it was MJ Delaney, who's this BAFTA-winning director, and she, I went up and told her what I thought should happen, and she told me to like piss off up down the back, because so I learned quickly, there was the director, there's the first AD, second AD, and all these other staff that you've got to sort of, and you've got to know your place. And a post-production guy being on set is a relatively new thing, and they've got schedules to stick to, and they don't need some audio post nerd complaining about how his job's going to be more difficult later, because they've always worked out, you know, you figure out, but the quality of the ad in the end is just better with it. So that's like, I've got a bit of a weird relationship with that one, because it's like it's a bit wonky to the timing and things, but it's as good as it could be, I think. Yeah, that's a weird ad. Yeah. I might talk about this quickly first, actually. So this is my, if you're going to work in advertising, and it's probably comparable-ish to other things, but there's the brand at the top, so all the people that you're trying to advertise. Then they'll go through the ad agency. There's a list of them there, and they'll be pitching out to work, like, so they're working around the clock trying to get work, trying to work with their existing clients, trying to nick clients off other people. And different agencies do different sort of like levels of work. So Wyden and Kennedy tend to do creative, interesting things. And we want to work with the sort of interesting people because it's funner. And then they are generally, I'll see the client maybe when we're signing stuff off, but the ad agency is sort of the go-between. And the agency people that I'm dealing with are generally the producer who's managing the whole job from the offset, so they're dealing with the whole timeline and pulling everything together, getting so they'll employ the production company who go off and shoot the thing and get all the assets ready to like edit it, and then you've got an accounts person who's generally the sort of in between the client and the ad agency when they're saying, I don't think it's right, and the accounts person should be going, but we're the ads people, we know what we're doing, so let's do it. And then there's a creative team who come up with the concept initially, generally 2 people, and they'll write the script. It's their creative ad, generally. It's a bit weird because then you have a director who sort of manages the things from on set. So the director will help the creative team sort of fulfill their vision of it and maybe have some input. The director like pulls a lot of the teams together as well. And then maybe a creative director or someone that works at the company. Yeah, and then you're working in tandem with the edit house, the VFX people. They're sort of pinging links back and forward to you so that you'll get some early edit, you'll try and do some stuff, send it back to them, the graphics will come up. So like on Sainsbury's job at the moment, over this weekend they've been sent a load of stuff out to India to get them to redo a load of effects for us to finish it off today. Yeah, so we're all working in tandem to try and hit a deadline at the end of the day. And then, so these are some of the bigger, if you fancy doing this sort of work, these companies are some of the ones that you probably want to start looking at. Factory do really cool stuff. Stringtons are very good, obviously. They're sort of the big main hitters, but there are loads of little tiny places, but you just won't be doing, but you won't get the same sort of budgets. Probably get to do some interesting work. If you want to work for a big place doing big global campaigns, then these are the sort of places that you probably need to look at. Yeah, I thought I'd quickly go over the sort of tech and how things have moved while I've been there. So when I joined, someone would come across something. This was only 8 years ago. No, even when I was doing it, so back in 2014, people would come with a tape. You'd take the tape, you could load in your picture, you'd do your mix, you'd lay it back to tape, a guy would come on a bike, leg it over to whoever needs it next, or take it off for play out. So since I've joined, people have embraced pinging things around with the internet a lot more, which has meant that turnaround times are now like insane, so people just expect you just to figure something out, and they'll say, we need this in half an hour. So you've got to get in, do your stuff, and people just want, changes and things immediately. And the internet's helped with remote collabs, so I work with all the musicians and things I work with. I've got no idea where they are, like some people are in different parts of Europe. We've just started working with a colleague's just moved to Australia, he's still going to work for Stringtons, because he gets to work through the night, so I can hand over some work to him, he can just download it, do all of his stuff overnight, get back, and then we're just getting more work done, And then being the tech manager so I've had to consider security a lot more, so we've just started working with, I've signed the most crazy NDA you've ever seen, so I can't say who it is, but it's one of the biggest brands in the world. And the amount of steps that we need to have an isolated network for all their stuff. We have to frost the glass, cameras on the room, anything that the data comes out of. We have to have shredders in the room, safes, anyone's got to have a key card and an individual login. It's insane for an advert, but I think, when products are concerned, I guess that information is probably quite valuable. Loudness, I don't know if you guys talk about this as part of your, I guess people talk about mastering and the way that that's changed, but UK TV has changed from a more sort of peak level to an R128, more of an average level, so the way we mix is quite different now. So my mastering chain is generally just a limiter, just to make sure that I'm not clipping. Whereas before I used to crunch everything to buggery and limit it a bit as well. But you get a more dynamic, louder mix. And other nuanced stuff that comes with, so I've got to, Jace Sainsbury might go, your ad sounds a bit quiet, but that's because he's comparing it to the ad before in the ad break. So you've got to do stupid things like cheat leveling at the beginning, to make it sound louder there so people think that your ad is as loud as, other annoying things like that you've got to consider. VR binaural stuff is a bit of a buzzword, but because people want to be doing interesting creative things, they'll bring up stuff like, I want to do a VR ad or a binaural ad, so we've got the tools and things to do that and think about it. Atmos has become a thing since I've been working, so it's just so expensive to set up an Atmos, like a legitimate Atmos suite. But it's another one of those things about perceived value, because people hear about this buzzword, they want to work with a company that can do the coolest, biggest things. So I think you can do a cheaper Atmos by just putting a speaker in the ceiling, but you have to, it's just an example of having to change as things move on, so I'm an Atmos mixer now, so you just learn on the job, just like with everything else. And the rise of home studios and affordable kit means that we're competing with very nimble and really cheap people that may be really good just working from home on pretty comprehensive setups. Like we all work from home as well, which is quite cool. But that has an effect on the value across the whole industry. So all of our work, for a certain type of work, probably is cheaper for the client now, because you're competing with these people that can afford to sort of not rent a big studio in Soho. And I think that has meant that there's been a move to these smaller post houses like Stringtons, because you've got lower overheads, you can take more risks, you can do cooler stuff, and people want to work with these nimble little companies doing interesting things rather than a huge place that will just sort of turn your job around. I think that might not be the case, but I think it's a perception thing. So I thought probably one of the more useful things that you can get from me is how to get work. So I graduated and spent a year just not very efficiently trying to get work. And I was telling Roy earlier, I probably applied for about 100 jobs. But just going on Mandy.com and just applying for every job that looks relevant. But it's just, when I was at Jungle, I think we probably got about 20 applications a day, unique applications. But just giving a CV in just isn't enough. I'll get to that. So you probably want to be in London. I think you can work in Birmingham, not in Birmingham, sorry, definitely not Birmingham. I think there'll be a bit of work in Birmingham. But in Bristol, if you want to do some documentary work, I've got some friends that do that. Maybe Manchester for a bit of telly. I expect, and they've got a bit of ad work. But you want to be working in London, really. Did people expect, if they're going to do this, they're going to go to London? Yeah?
Regrettably.
Maybe. And it's expensive, and it's really hard work when you start. I'll carry on with this. So when I started as a runner, I think I was on about 13 grand, which is like, it's just really hard. I think it's more now, and that generally there's a push to fairer wages. Now people are sort of more aware of it. But it's a struggle to get by, but it gets a lot better. You just have to sort of see it through. But I'd say that you have to work in London, or if you're going to work in, I think on the APA website they've got lists of other places, but you can definitely work in the major cities. So I think you work in, Vancouver, LA. Got a mate that's just gone to work for Amsterdam, Berlin. You have to work in the major city, and London's one of the main ones, obviously. And then I have loads of people, because we do a lot of work experience and stuff, and so you get to see a big A/B between different people that want to do the work and the people that you want to work with. And we don't really mind, you're not going to be judged on your work coming out of uni. When I came out of uni, I was pretty sure I was going to become an engineer straight away. But you're just at the bottom of the chain, unfortunately. It doesn't matter how good your work is. So no one's going to be really assessing how the quality of your work, but what they are assessing out of a runner, which is what gets you through the door, is just someone interesting to work with and just a nice, cool person. Because we've had like some really strange people come and try and but you want to work with people that are going to be pleasant to work with. I work like 12-hour days. You want to work with people that are nice to be around. Reliable and respectful, which you think you wouldn't have to say it, but they, a runner just come in and commenting on my job, saying about how he'd probably do it differently, isn't a great start. Because you just got to be respectful to people that have been doing the job for the last 10 years. Reliable as well, like just broadly, you need to turn up on time, you need to stay late, and I work with a lot of composers. I'll say the music needs to be here 9 o'clock on Thursday, and sometimes, generally, people fairly fresh from uni, they won't get round to it, or they don't understand the importance of these deadlines, and they just won't, and I'll just never work with them again, and so they'll have lost out on a load of work and money, and probably just won't keep a foot in the industry. And obviously passionate about audio and whatever, but I think that's a given. But you've got to be interested, you've got to be making music if that's your thing, you've got to maybe try and have a side gig on the go and just be clearly interested that you're going to give just shows that you're going to give your all when you're working there. Like networking is, I was pretty shy, awkward student, so my networking skills maybe weren't that great, but I got my job because I stayed friends with Fred, and he got a foot in the door, so it's just good to just keep in touch with everyone. And some of the work experience that I did led to other opportunities. So work experience is networking, just chatting to people on Twitter about what they're doing, just whatever. And that goes with experience, so just getting some bits and bobs jobs over the holidays or while you're trying to find work will just show that you're committed and interested and that you're doing what it takes to get into the role, because you're competing with other people that will be doing this stuff. Like portfolio is something that comes up a lot with the younger guys that come in, because they've got a lot of excuses about they can't get the work to put something together, or no one wants to work with them because they haven't got a portfolio. But you just need to be make some tunes, do some work on your sound and visual stuff from uni and tart it up and just it just shows that you're interested and that you're doing this stuff behind the scenes. No one's going to be, and they can come to me and they show me their portfolio and they'll ask for advice on it and things. Just it's a good way to open the dialogue. And applying efficiently, so like I said, I applied for 100 jobs, but then I think there's a difference between applying for a job and trying to get the work. So I would say you need to identify the places that you want to work, and then like figure out who's working there, who you probably need to speak to. Maybe get in touch with them and say like, can you let me know when you're recruiting? Just randomly messaging people on LinkedIn is just a bit of a waste of time, and I didn't do it very efficiently. So, and yeah, approach them appropriately. But so for Stringertons, it took me about I've been talking to them since they set it up. And that was 5 years ago. And it never worked out, but I kept in touch with Mike, kept hitting him up every now and then, like had a Spotify, music, WhatsApp or whatever, just tried to stay keen and interested and just on his radar, and eventually it just worked out. And then I wish that I'd known about this website when I was applying, because that's literally, if you want a job in the industry, just go on there and all the companies seem legit. And that's how I got my Stringertons job. I just saw it advertised on there. So you want a runner's position, you can go for it, but unless maybe it's a smaller company, but I wouldn't bother applying for anything apart from a runner. Unless you've already got the experience, then maybe you can go for a transfer. But have a look on there and look at the companies, see what work they're doing, see if they're doing interesting work, and then apply through them. Yeah, and then that's it. So, was that useful? Has anyone got any questions or anything? Yeah?
What has been your favourite project to work on?
I don't know, the Samsung one was really fun because I just got to lock myself away on my own, which is my favourite way to be, with synths and things. The Sainsbury's job I'm doing at the moment is really cool because I feel like I'm in control and I'm doing a huge, the cast, it was like a cast of 500 people. There's loads of post work. The director is Michael, who did Greatest Showman not long ago, so I get to work with someone that my mum knows. And then, and that's had an orchestra involved, the choir, directing loads of kids singing, and it's just been like a cool, involved job. And I did a job called, there's an Audi electric car, which is like all these photons come zooming down and form a car, and then it drives off. That was awesome because it's just like synth noodling and lots of perspective stuff, and yeah, that was really fun. Oh, sorry, yeah.
I've literally just forgotten what it was. Oh yeah, sorry. It was with the kind of DAWs in your workflow and stuff like that. Do you find that there tends to be a standard you all have to adhere to?
Yeah.
Jungle and Stringertons, or is it like if you kind of got a project you're working on, do you have a preference? You can say, I'd like to do it this way, and that's what works for me. Yeah,
no, that's good. At Jungle we had so the previous place I worked at, we used Fairlight Dream, not Pro Tools, and that was a much less flexible way of working. And that was I think we had 32 mono tracks, 64 stereo tracks, and you just file your sound effects onto a timeline, and just it was just a bit of a mess. But where I work now, we bus everything quite meticulously, because I've got to hand my work over to somebody and they've got to understand what the hell's going on. So I've written a handover email last night for the guy covering for me today, and I've got buses of, I think I've got a sound effects bus, music bus, an M&E bus, where those music and elements bus, where they all go into vocals, dialogue, just everything to keep it organised, and then a checkerboard. So curtains, closing sound effects will be in a lump, because I'll cut that 2 minute down to a 90, a 60, a 30, because that's how telly works. And it's just much easier. They can just whack things over, But yeah, no, it has to be really organised, and it's a nightmare if they're not on, if their notes aren't good, or yeah. So we try and keep it, but we'll adapt it for the project. So might have yeah, particularly, and I'm going to have to, when I do the cinema mix for this on Wednesday, I'm going to have to change all my busing to accommodate the 5-1 sort of aspect of it. Yeah.
My question just got answered.
Oh, okay. Any more questions? Yeah?
You said about difficult employees, but difficult clients, how do you deal with those guys?
How do I deal with them? How do I deal with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to try and be relentlessly charming through it. Yeah, no, that is difficult, and it's something that I still have to work on, struggle with. Eventually, you just have to just beat them down with being nice, or attempting to be. But some people just don't like you. Some people, yeah, like it takes all sorts, and some people like to work with different people. Fortunately, it's quite complicated. It's just like, yeah, real life. But the job gets compared to hairdressing quite a bit as well, because you're sat there. In my first week, I had this guy. It was just me and him. We were doing a promo for BBC or something. My first week engineering, and he was crying because his brother had just died, and he's just going through all these problems. Yeah, so it's a weird job because you're there in a room with these people for like 12 hours sometimes a day for maybe weeks. It's partly why they want nice people, because you can't be abrasive in those sort of situations, you know. Yeah, sorry.
What advice would you give someone who's trying to find a placement in like this area for science?
For like the gap year, yeah. There'll be. You can drop me an email if you want to do this, and then I know lots of people, but then I'd just get in touch with find places that you want to work, call the reception and say that you're looking for some experience. And generally, like all the places that work, and all my friends, they take people on short term, you'll get paid, and they might even, it might be helpful for them if it's a bit of luck of the draw. So when people apply for the jobs as well, it might be just that whoever's CV's at the top of the pile. I just find the places you want to go, email me and us. Yeah. And just be prepared with the other stuff, just explain what you want to get out of it. Oh, and yeah, the other thing, a lot of people want to get into music, which is fine. But if you're going to a post-production house, and some people can be a little bit snobby about the sound design things, because they're like, I'm actually a musician. So just be respectful of that sort of thing, you know. Yeah.
Chance for one more question. I've got a question then. What were your musical abilities like when you started?
Yeah, not great. Started making music at uni. Some terrible dubstep, because that was what was on at the time. And then I've just tried to learn as I'm going. But no one, even the most arguably the most successful composer at my company, isn't particularly musically trained. He just knows how to make a banger, and that's all we care about, is the people that make consistently great on-brief tunes. So that's something that is good to practice, is just writing to a brief, because you have to turn tunes around quite quickly, and having a library of stuff sitting there, which is maybe close to what a brief might be, if you're interested in that. But my ability was not great. It's still not. I've won stuff, because the people choosing the music aren't hugely musically capable themselves. You know, all they know is that that sounds good to them. So I'm getting better. It's still something I'm learning, but not perfect.